The dark skies stretched out above the alien, casting a quiet, ominous shadow over the desolate landscape. The air was thick with an unsettling chill as the creature moved cautiously through the unfamiliar terrain. Its heart raced with uncertainty. It had heard stories about humans, rumors whispered from one generation to the next. Tales of strange, violent beings who could either befriend or destroy you in the blink of an eye. The alien had always dismissed those stories as exaggerated, but now, standing in a place where no one from its species had ever ventured, it felt a deep unease. This was the moment it would finally meet a human. The alien's blue skin shimmered faintly in the dim light, and its wide, glowing purple eyes scanned the surroundings nervously. The planet's atmosphere was different from anything it had encountered before. The air smelled strange, heavy with the scent of plants and something unfamiliar. A distant hum filled the air, like a machine idling in the background, but there was no visible source of the noise. The alien paused for a moment, its ears twitching as it tried to pinpoint where the sound was coming from. But there was nothing, just emptiness. The alien had been trained for this. Its mission was clear: to learn about humans, observe them, and report back. But there was something about this moment, something about the weight of its first encounter with another species, that made it feel exposed, vulnerable. It had always been told that humans were unpredictable. Would this first meeting be one of hostility? Or would the alien find something unexpected? The uncertainty gnawed at its thoughts. And then, the silence was broken. A figure appeared in the distance, human. The alien's heart skipped a beat, its senses suddenly heightened. This was no longer a theory or a distant possibility. It was real. A human. The stories of their brutality, their strength, their unpredictability flooded the alien's mind. The creature instinctively took a step back, but something held it in place. It couldn't move. Fear and curiosity mingled, creating a conflict inside the alien's chest. The human was walking toward it, seemingly unaware of the alien's presence. The creature's eyes widened. The human was taller than it had expected, broad-shouldered, and yet the alien could sense the same nervousness emanating from the figure. They looked just like the descriptions it had heard: pale skin, dark hair, and eyes that gleamed with a sense of purpose. But there was a flicker of hesitation in their movements, something the alien had not anticipated. The human wasn't charging forward, ready to strike. Instead, they seemed cautious. The alien's mind raced. Was this a trick? Could this human be trying to test it, to push it into a confrontation? The fear crept back up, thick and suffocating, but the creature stood its ground. There was nowhere to hide, no way to run. It had to face this moment. The human finally stopped about 10 feet away, their eyes locking with the alien's. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Time seemed to stretch on forever as both tried to process the other's presence. The alien's breathing quickened, each inhale shallow as it tried to figure out what to do next. The air between them was thick with tension, with the weight of 1,000 questions. Who was this human? What did they want? Could this be the end? The silence seemed endless, and the alien's thoughts started to cloud with doubt. Was this what the human species was known for? Was this how every first meeting went? The alien had anticipated danger, but there was no aggression, no hostile gestures, just a human standing silently before it, studying it with a look that was almost curious. And then, unexpectedly, the human took a small step forward. The alien's heart pounded in its chest. Was this the moment? Would the human finally reveal its true intentions? The alien instinctively braced itself, prepared for anything, except for what came next. The human smiled. It wasn't the wild, predatory grin the alien had expected. It wasn't a look of violence or rage. It was simple, gentle, almost welcoming. The alien froze, unable to comprehend what was happening. Everything it had been told about humans had prepared it for hostility, but this smile, this quiet gesture, made the creature's heart pound for an entirely different reason. The alien didn't know what to feel. Confusion swirled with its growing fear, and somewhere deep inside, an unfamiliar stir of something else began to awaken. It was as though the alien had crossed an invisible line, and what lay ahead was no longer a path of mere survival. It was something far more complicated and far more unsettling. This encounter was no longer just about the unknown. It was about something deeper, something the alien had not expected. It had come here to observe and report. But in that moment, standing face to face with a human, the alien realized that it was experiencing something far more intense. It was being changed in a way it couldn't quite understand yet. The human smile lingered in the air, leaving the alien in an odd state of confusion. The alien's senses were heightened, its wide, glowing purple eyes locked onto the human's face as it processed the unexpected gesture. Its heart was still pounding, but now it was no longer just from fear. It was something else, something it didn't fully understand. It had expected a confrontation, a fight for survival, or maybe even a test of strength. Instead, it was met with a human who seemed kind. The alien's mind raced, trying to figure out how to respond to this strange, quiet moment. The air was thick with tension, and the alien could feel its body tightening, ready to react. It had been trained for encounters like this, but no amount of training could prepare it for the flood of conflicting emotions it now felt. What was this human doing? Was it a trick? Was the smile hiding something darker beneath it? The alien's instincts screamed to stay on guard, to protect itself, but it found its body frozen, unsure of what to do. For a long, agonizing moment, the alien and the human simply stared at each other. The human was still standing there, eyes soft, arms at their sides, as though waiting for the alien to make the first move. The silence between them felt endless, stretching on, suffocating the space with its weight. The alien could feel its muscles tense in anticipation. Would the human attack? Would they speak? Or would this moment pass and leave them both standing in an awkward, unresolved standoff? It was then that the human spoke. The words came out slow, unsure, as if the human was also trying to make sense of what was happening. "Are you real?" The voice was quiet, almost a whisper, but there was no malice in it. The human wasn't angry. There was no trace of aggression in their tone. It was a question, a simple inquiry, as if the human was just as shocked by this moment as the alien was. The alien's heart skipped a beat. Real, it thought. The concept of real was different for the alien. It had never considered such a question before. Was the human asking if the alien itself was real, or was the human wondering about the encounter itself? Was this some kind of test? An opportunity for the human to see if the alien would answer? The questions kept swirling in its mind, but it couldn't find a way to respond. The alien had never been taught how to talk to humans. It had only been told to observe. And then, the human did something unexpected. They took a small, hesitant step forward, closing the distance between them. The alien flinched, its instincts screaming to flee. But it didn't. It was rooted to the spot, unable to move, as though it were trapped by some invisible force. The human's approach was slow, deliberate, but not threatening. The alien could feel its breath quicken, the panic rising, its body bracing for an attack. But when the human reached out a hand, the alien's fear shot through the roof. This was it. This was the moment it had dreaded. This human was going to grab it, hurt it, or worse. The alien's skin prickled with an overwhelming sense of danger. But instead of violence, the human's hand hovered just inches away from the alien's shoulder. The touch was light, almost tentative, as though the human was uncertain about what to do. "It's okay," the human said, their voice surprisingly gentle. "I'm not going to hurt you." The alien couldn't believe it. It had never considered that humans could be kind. The stories it had heard from its people were filled with tales of brutality, humans as merciless creatures who would destroy anything in their path. And yet this human wasn't acting like that at all. The words rang in the alien's ears, but they didn't make sense. How could this human be offering kindness when everything it had learned told it to expect danger? The alien was paralyzed, caught in a whirlwind of emotions. It didn't know whether to trust the human or to recoil in fear. The fear was still there, bubbling under the surface, a constant reminder of how dangerous this meeting could be. But beneath that, there was something else, something the alien couldn't ignore. The warmth of the human's hand, the softness in their voice, the way they weren't threatening. It was almost as if they understood the alien's fears. The human's fingers twitched slightly, as if sensing the alien's hesitation. "You're not alone," the human said, more to themselves than to the alien. But those words hit the alien like a wave. Not alone. Was that what the human meant? Was there more to this encounter than it had ever anticipated? The alien's body still refused to move, still trapped in the whirlpool of confusion, fear, and something else. Something it had never felt before. A strange mix of emotions, an overwhelming blend of terror and curiosity, surged through it. It couldn't decide whether to pull away or to lean into the human's touch. But before it could make any decision, the human slowly withdrew their hand, the moment passing like a fleeting dream. The alien stood there, motionless, heart pounding, its mind reeling. What had just happened? The world had tilted, and the alien didn't know how to make sense of this moment. The fear was still there, but now something else had taken its place. Something new, something confusing, and something that terrified the alien even more than the idea of the human's violence. The possibility of a connection. And in that moment, the alien realized something crucial. It had no idea what to do next. The alien stood still, its senses heightened, heart still racing. The human had taken a step back, but the lingering feeling of their touch, however brief, stayed with the alien. The warmth that radiated from the human's hand had ignited something inside the creature. It wasn't just the fear anymore. There was something else, something confusing, new, and undeniably powerful. The alien could feel its pulse quicken as it tried to make sense of the emotions stirring within it. This was no longer just about survival, about observation. This was something deeper, something it had never been trained to understand. The air between them was thick with uncertainty. The human had retreated slightly, but there was no longer the same distance between them. The alien could still sense their presence, like a pull it couldn't explain. The stories it had heard about humans had always painted them as dangerous, unpredictable, but never had it considered that they could also evoke such emotions. Its mind was still filled with doubt. Should it run? Should it stay? But despite the overwhelming fear that gripped its body, it couldn't bring itself to leave. There was something about the human that was drawing it in, making it want to learn more, to understand. The human was speaking again, though the alien hardly heard the words. It was too focused on the way the human's voice seemed to wrap around it, soothing in ways it couldn't comprehend. "I promise I'm not going to hurt you," the human repeated, their tone soft and reassuring. The alien's chest tightened as it struggled to control the emotions swirling within. The fear was still there, but now it was joined by an unexpected sense of longing, an unexplainable desire to stay closer, to learn more, to understand what this human was offering. But how could it? How could it trust this feeling, this pull toward the human, when everything it knew about its species had taught it to be cautious? The alien had never experienced anything like this before. In its world, emotions were simpler, controlled, even suppressed. But now, everything felt foreign, raw, and uncontrollable. The alien's thoughts raced. It had heard of emotions like affection, attraction, desire, but it had never truly understood them until now. And yet, as it looked at the human before it, those feelings were undeniable. Every glance from the human seemed to stir something deep within the alien. Every small movement, the way the human shifted, the way they hesitated, made the alien's heart beat faster. The alien's mind began to cloud with a strange heat, an unfamiliar tension building inside its chest. What was this? What was this sensation that made it want to be closer to the human? to feel the warmth of their touch again. The desire to understand this feeling only grew stronger, pulling at the alien in a way it couldn't explain. There was something undeniably magnetic about the human, something the alien hadn't expected to encounter, yet here it was, awakening desires it didn't even know it was capable of. It was as though the alien had never truly understood its own emotions until now. The more it observed the human, the more it became clear that this wasn't just about fear or survival. It was about something deeper, something human. The alien had been trained to study, to watch, to analyze. But in this moment, it was caught up in something far beyond observation. It was being drawn into the human's world, unable to resist. The human, sensing the alien's inner turmoil, took a tentative step closer. The alien tensed, instinctively preparing to step back, to put more space between them. But it didn't. It stayed rooted in place, unsure of what would happen next. It was almost as if its body had betrayed it, unwilling to retreat, unwilling to run. The human reached out once again, but this time, they didn't try to touch the alien. Instead, they simply offered a small, reassuring smile, as though they understood the alien's confusion, as though they knew the alien was fighting an internal battle it couldn't win. For the first time, the alien felt a deep pang of vulnerability. The human was offering kindness, but there was more to it than that. There was something else, a connection that was stirring the alien's heart in ways it couldn't comprehend. It wanted to pull away, to retreat into its own comfort zone, to follow the training it had been given. But it couldn't. The desire to understand this human, to know what this strange feeling meant, was stronger than anything it had ever felt before. It couldn't fight it. It didn't want to. As the human's eyes met its once again, the alien found itself unable to look away. The emotions swirling within were overwhelming. The fear, the confusion, and now, this new, inexplicable longing. The alien was no longer just observing. It was now part of this moment, part of this encounter. It didn't know what to expect, but it knew one thing for sure. This first meeting had become something far more than it had ever anticipated. It had opened the alien's eyes to emotions it never knew it could feel. And as much as it terrified the alien, it was undeniable. It wanted to feel more. The alien stood there, caught in the pull of something it had never known, feeling a sense of longing that made its chest ache. And just as quickly as that feeling had come, it became clear. The alien wasn't afraid anymore. It was something else, something deeper, something that had awakened in the most unexpected of ways. The alien didn't understand it yet, but one thing was certain. Its world had changed forever. The alien stood there, heart pounding, caught between fear and something it couldn't understand. The human was still standing in front of it, their face soft with kindness, and yet the alien was more confused than ever. It had come to observe, to study, but now it was living something entirely different. Its thoughts swirled with uncertainty. Why did I stay? Why didn't I run when I had the chance? The human's presence was magnetic. It wasn't just that they weren't threatening. It was more than that. It was the quiet reassurance in their eyes, the way they stood there, waiting for the alien to make its own decision. The alien could feel its walls breaking down, piece by piece, until all that remained was a raw, vulnerable sense of being. The alien had always thought of emotions as something to control, something to be avoided. But now, standing in front of this human, it realized how little it truly understood. The human slowly stepped forward once again, but this time, there was no hesitation, no uncertainty. They reached out a hand, not to touch the alien, but to offer it a sense of peace. The gesture was so simple, yet so profound. The alien's chest tightened as the human's hand hovered in front of it. It wasn't an offer of violence or dominance. It was an offer of trust, of companionship. The alien's breath hitched as it fought the urge to pull away, to retreat into its own familiar, controlled world. But it couldn't. Not anymore. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The world around them seemed to stand still, as if time itself were holding its breath, waiting for the alien to make a choice. The tension was palpable, thick in the air. The alien's mind raced. It had been trained to never trust others, to never let its guard down. But everything about this human was different. They weren't like the stories. They weren't like the warnings it had been given. This human was kind, understanding, and above all else, they weren't trying to harm the alien. They were offering something precious, something the alien had never considered: acceptance. The alien took a shaky breath, its body trembling with uncertainty. It wanted to run, to hide in the safety of its own mind, but something inside it was pulling it closer to the human. Slowly, as though testing the waters, the alien extended a hand, its fingers trembling. The human's smile widened, but it was gentle, patient. The human didn't rush, didn't demand anything from the alien. They simply waited. The alien's heart beat faster, unsure of what it was feeling, but it couldn't stop. It was as though the very act of reaching out was opening a floodgate within. The alien's fingers brushed against the human's hand. The contact was light, tentative, but it sent a shock of warmth through the alien's body, a warmth it had never felt before. In that moment, it realized something that shifted the very core of its being. The alien wasn't afraid anymore. The human didn't pull away. Instead, they gently grasped the alien's hand, holding it with the same kindness and understanding that had been present from the very beginning. And in that touch, something profound passed between them. A connection. The alien's pulse slowed, the overwhelming sense of fear fading away as the desire to understand, to belong, took its place. It had come to this world expecting danger, expecting an enemy, but it had found something else entirely. Tears welled up in the alien's eyes. Tears it had never known how to shed. The emotion was overwhelming, too much to contain. The alien had never experienced this sense of belonging, this connection to another being. It had always believed that its species was alone in the universe, that it was destined to remain separate from the others. But now it understood. Connection, trust, and even love. These were things that transcended species, transcended boundaries. And the human was showing it that. The alien looked into the human's eyes, and for the first time, it saw not a potential enemy, but a friend, a partner. The tension that had filled the air was gone, replaced by a profound sense of peace. The human's smile never wavered, and the alien felt a wave of warmth spread through its body, from its heart all the way to its fingertips. It wasn't just the end of a meeting. It was the beginning of something entirely new. In that quiet moment, the alien realized something even more important. The fear it had felt, the confusion, the hesitation, all of it had been a part of the process. It had been necessary. Without that first step into the unknown, without the fear that had led it here, it would never have discovered what it truly needed. The alien didn't need to be afraid anymore. It had found what it was searching for, not answers or survival, but something far more profound: connection. And so, in the warmth of the human's touch, with the weight of emotions the alien had never known, the creature allowed itself to finally relax. It wasn't alone. It wasn't lost. It had found something more valuable than it could have ever imagined. It had found a kindred spirit, and with that realization came peace. A peace the alien never expected to find, but one that would stay with it forever.